Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got a nice little treat. We got some revenge stories for you. Some pro-revenge, some nuclear revenge. Oh, it's gonna be a fun episode. Xbox Gamer 2122, special sandwich just for you. I went to a high school reunion last week, and while we were all reliving our glory days, this story came up. One that I had not thought about in decades. The two principal characters are Marv, a nickname based on his last name, and Dickie, who was not only a bully but a total asshole. Marv gave me permission to use his nickname. Back in high school, Dickie would wait until Marv put his lunch tray down on the table, sneak up and snatch his food, usually a sandwich or a burger, and take a huge bite out of it. Lots of laughter, and usually someone would tell Marv to just tear off a piece with the bite taken out of it, and then he could eat his sandwich. Marv refused, and on more than one occasion would just dump the tray and go to his locker where he kept snacks. He and his best friend plotted revenge. They tried different ways and eventually came up with a sandwich overstuffed with tomato sauce that would explode when a bite was taken out of it. To keep it from leaking, they put a ring of peanut butter around the edges, disguising it as a peanut butter sandwich and using the peanut butter to seal the edges together. The day they brought in that special sandwich, it was announced during homeroom that morning that picture day would be 2 days later. So they aborted the mission until picture day. It went perfectly. Dickie grabbed the very plump sandwich and the peanut butter held it together until he squeezed it while taking a big bite. Tomato sauce came flying out, covering Dickie's hair, face, and the front of his white shirt and clip-on tie that he was wearing. And it ran down his pants, shoes, and the floor. When the lunchroom monitor rushed over and asked what happened, a bunch of us, I was one of them, told her that Dickie had stolen Marv's sandwich and started eating it. Then it came out that Dickie had been taking bites of Marv's food all year. Dickie was not allowed to eat in the cafeteria for the rest of the year, and his parents, who were horrified, voluntarily put money into Marv's lunch account. We never did see how Dickie's pictures turned out. Honestly, this is probably not the place to really be remembering this, but does anyone remember Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, specifically the one bite episode where they had the kid who would go around and ask, "Oh, come on, can I just have one bite of this?" And if they foolishly accepted, his jaw would unhinge like a raptor as he stuffed in the entirety of the food, easily taking 90% of it with one single bite, leaving behind the remains of what was once someone's ham sandwich made by their mother with love. So our heroes decided to go and concoct a plan where they made a burger full of the spiciest of chili peppers they could find and fed it to the glutton, basically permanently scarring that kid for the rest of his life. Anyways, that's what this reminds me of. I don't know if anyone else remembers that episode, but if I'm gonna be honest, one of the only reasons I remember Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide was because Cookie, his tech sunglasses that he made, where it was made with bionicle parts, so that that's like a core memory, is pointing at his sunglasses and go, "Oh, I have that at home!" Or it's same thing with Nickelodeon's The Troop, where all of their weapons were just repainted Nerf guns. Honestly, in the end of it, I do think this is probably one of the better ways to get revenge on someone, because you're not poisoning them, you're just making a mess out of them. I don't know, because apparently, legally, if you poison someone with your own food, knowing they're going to take a bite out of it, you are technically liable. Or at least that's my understanding of it from just general conversation around the legalities of poisoning your own food in order to get back at a coworker. You know, poisoning in terms of laxatives or like, peppers or stuff like that. Not necessarily like, arsenic, but yeah, I think this is a fun way to get back at someone who's being a complete dick. Oh, what's this? A nice little surprise? A nuclear revenge just for you? Of course it is. A quiet borderline. A mother's instigation, a daughter's completion. Tagged with, "I'm not proud of this." I have promised my late friend that I wouldn't share this story until at least a year after her death. That time has passed, and this is nothing short of beautiful, cruel, but beautiful. I'm going to switch to first-person POV. This is the story as my late friend told me. I was an only child to two loving parents. Mom had a difficult pregnancy and an even harder labor. It was so bad that the doctor advised that they never try again. Because he didn't want his wife to die, Dad got a vasectomy that was successful. I was sad that I didn't have any siblings, but I had a happy childhood until I was a young adult. When I was in the middle of college, Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 HGSOC, high-grade serous ovarian cancer. It's the most aggressive form of ovarian cancer, and Mom's older sister and Mom both died from it. We knew her odds weren't good. I don't know what Dad was thinking, I really don't, but he started an affair with his coworker, a woman just a few years older than me. Coworker started integrating herself into my and Mom's life. She'd go shopping with us, keep the house in order, help me with homework, and even sit with Mom when Mom was going through chemo and Dad and I weren't there. And no, I had no clue at all. I just thought it was Coworker being kind to a family going through hard times. Mom fought. She fought hard, but the odds just weren't in her favor. One day, I was visiting her in hospice, and we were playing Chutes and Ladders. Mom got real quiet, and then she told me, "You know your dad isn't planning to reverse his vasectomy, right?" I was surprised, wondering what she was talking about. "Yeah, I know," I said. "Why?" Mom just looked at me and said, "I think you'd best keep it in mind." We continued playing, and when I left for the night, I kissed her and she said, "You'll be fine on your own." She died that night. I believe she knew she was going to die that night and didn't want to scare me. Once again, Coworker was right by our side. She helped us plan the funeral, brought us food, helped out around the house, and slowly started moving her things in. It was like putting a frog in a pot of water and having the temperature raised. It was slow, it was gradual. A year or so later, she had completely moved herself in and was part of our lives. I don't remember what made me suspicious enough to start digging, but started digging I did. I learned the affair began shortly after Mom's diagnosis. I was sickened, furious, and saddened. I took out my cell, ready to confront Dad and Coworker with the knowledge, but something else struck me. See, during one of her visits, Coworker mentioned to Mom and me that she wished to have children with her fiancé. Mom knew that affair was going on, and she trusted me to spill the beans. But I wanted to twist the knife further. As a result, I decided to play the long game. It was a gamble, one that had a good chance of not paying off, but it was one I was willing to take. I kept my mouth shut. I watched as they courted, got engaged, and married 3 years later. I squealed with delight when they announced their engagement to me, wore a proud smile on their wedding day, and made a toast at the reception. I even took extra steps to hide test results from Dad's urologist in such a way that Coworker wouldn't find it, but Dad would. Oh, believe me, I was internally screaming. I wanted the world to know the way they hurt Mom and me during her darkest hour. I got dangerously close several times, but I said nothing, knowing the payoff would be worth it. Time passed. We played happy family. I got married to my awesome husband and had children. Dad and Coworker played doting grandparents, but I knew from the pained look on Coworker's face that she was bemoaning her empty nest. Just as I was beginning to give up hope, the day came. Coworker and I had started the tradition of getting together for coffee shortly after Mom's death. We talked girl things, again as I internally screamed. Laugh, cry, love, live, that sort of thing. That day, Coworker was sad and sullen. I could tell she had been crying. I asked what was wrong. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard why. She was struggling to get pregnant for years, but assumed it was stress from work. Then her periods started coming fewer and farther between. She decided to go to the doctor and find out why. It turned out she was entering perimenopause, and her chances of successfully getting pregnant had dwindled. The doctor told her, in essence, her childbearing years were over. As I crooned sympathetic noises, Coworker said, "It doesn't make sense. We tried so hard to have kids, but I wasn't able to get pregnant. I don't know why." It was then that I knew it was time. "You mean Dad didn't tell you?" "Didn't tell me what?" she asked. I was fighting every chance to smile as I tried playing the "it's not my right to tell" and "I can't believe he didn't tell you" cards until she practically begged me. I should have won an Oscar for my performance. I told her about the vasectomy and that Dad had no intention of reversing it. You should have seen Coworker. She completely deflated like a balloon. Her shoulders slumped, she bowed her head, and she sobbed in her hands. I wanted to rejoice. I wanted to rub it in her face. I knew that would make me look like the bad guy. So I hugged her and rubbed her back, telling her Dad was horrible for not telling her that she deserved a different outcome and that he had completely wasted her time. Again, I was fighting to not smile. When she left, I told her I would always be there for her, but I knew she wasn't going to be part of my life anymore. Why would she? I was the daughter of the man who betrayed her. Once she had left and I was alone, I wept with joy and relief that it paid off, but also deep sorrow that Mom couldn't have been there to see it. That was the last time that I saw or talked to coworker. A few weeks later, Dad called me in a fury. Coworker had packed her bags and left, slapping him with divorce papers. She yelled at him for not being honest with her that he had a vasectomy that he had no intention of reversing. That he knew she wanted kids, that she had wasted all of her childbearing years, and that he had left it to me to tell her. He then said, "How could you do this to us? We loved you." I then said in a cold tone, "You and Mom did a good job of teaching me how to keep secrets." I hung up, and that was it. I never spoke to him again either. Last I heard, he and coworker were divorced, and everyone shunned him because of his keeping the secret. I know I won't be joining Mom after I die. What I did was cruel. It was horrible. I should have done what Mom wanted and spilled the beans beforehand instead of wasting coworker's youth and childbearing years. Even if she could adopt, she'd probably die before her children are fully grown. Although it's hard to have compassion and mercy for a woman who integrated herself into my dying mom's life as she was screwing Mom's husband. Too long didn't read. My friend's father had an affair as his wife was dying of cancer. His AP wanted children while he had a vasectomy he had no intention of reversing years before the affair began. Friend waited until AP's chances of getting pregnant were nil before telling her about the father's vasectomy. AP filed for divorce and friend cut off contact with both the AP and her father. I'm not gonna lie, I do feel some sympathy for the coworker in question here. Not a lot, but I do have a bit of sympathy. I have no sympathy for the father though, because what he did was unforgivable and wildly fucked up. For those of you who are new here, or for those of you who are new to the concept of nuclear revenge, it is exactly what it is. It's a mutually assured destruction type of revenge. In this case, the friend in this question, resigned themselves to the idea and notion that they would never see their mother again, even in death, and they lived the rest of their life with that thought. Less tragic than the coworker realizing that she was lied to by a horrible, horrible man, and spent her entire life trying to have children, constantly blaming herself, and only learning from a vengeful daughter that she had been lied to. The coworker is most certainly at fault in this situation, but I can't help but to have just a little bit of pity for what happened to her. We are all human, we all make mistakes. Sloppy pants mama. Didn't get paid from a painter from Craigslist, so I set my computer to auto-dial his phone for 3 days. Years ago, when there were only flip phones, I worked for a week for this guy off Craigslist, 8 or 10-hour days for 7 days straight. He dropped off $37 at my house with a nasty note saying I was a shitty painter and didn't even deserve the $37. I can't remember my hourly rate, but I know it was more than a few cents an hour. So this dude had mentioned he had arguments with his girlfriend about constantly calling and leaving messages because he would still incur a charge. So my buddy had a PC with a modem and set it up to dial the guy's phone for 3 straight days and leave a message for 2 seconds and hang up, then redial. Oh, I wish I knew what his bill was by the end. Always a big fan of utilizing technology in creative ways to get back at someone for doing something shitty. That's always a big bonus in my book, especially when it's something so specific as a random conversation that honestly most people would probably just chalk off as him being an asshole. Because even if he was exaggerating to his girlfriend and just trying to be a dick, there is still just the major annoyance of the fact that he was getting a call pretty much twice a minute with a 2-second voicemail filling up his inbox constantly. And that is a lovely thought. Too old for Reddit, 48. Out in the camper. So I'm the oldest of 4 siblings and was adopted, so I've always had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about rejection, etc. So I realize I can go out of my way to be overly sensitive about stuff. That being said, my younger brother has always had it a bit easier. He got more support, more opportunities, and was generally more entitled and arrogant about things. He's gotten a lot better lately, but growing up he was incredibly cheap and always made me and the other siblings pay lion's share of vacations and etc. And somehow he would get the best room in the Airbnb. It kept happening and got very annoying. He would also have problems with his card a lot when bills would come at restaurants, and was very argumentative about money to the point it was embarrassing, and we would just pay for him and his family for years. I actually had to Google what a lion's share was, and it means it's the largest part of a sum. That's a fun saying. We're all from New Zealand, so in the Christmas vacation, we all go back home to Mom's house and all stay with her. Mom and her husband are nice people, but kowtow a lot to my brother. So what happens every Xmas is my brother and sisters and their families travel from different parts of New Zealand or Australia to stay in the house, whereby I have to come all the way from the US, which is an 18 to 25 ordeal with family. At the end of this long flight and travel from airport, we're shown to a cramped camper at the back of the property as all the bedrooms have been taken up by my brother and sisters and their families. This happens every year without fail. I try to make a joke out of it, but deep down it kind of makes me feel like a second-class citizen. It doesn't have air conditioning, so it makes it tough to sleep on warm nights, not helping with the resentful chip on my shoulder. So, to the revenge. Recently, my mom has been expressing interest in coming with her husband to visit me in the US during the summer here, winter in New Zealand. Some of my siblings are also chiming in, saying they'd love to come visit too. I've been very lucky here and my business has worked well, so I managed to get a relatively nice house about 45 minutes out of the city on a big section with pool, etc. They are expecting, of course, to stay in the house like normal people. But no, I drove 6 hours to rural Pennsylvania to pick up a tiny vintage camper off Facebook Marketplace, flattened out some land, landscaped around it with a nice little deck, ran power and water to it, and unlike them, I hooked up an air conditioner. Now, when any of my family come to visit, they get to stay out in the camper. Oh, I can't wait for them to see it. Honestly, how kind of you to take the effort to actually install AC. that is... I hope to God this gets an update because my curiosity is really piqued with this one and how they'll end up reacting to it. Honestly, the fact alone that you've taken the time to get a vintage camper, build a deck around it, flatten it out, run power and water, and hook up AC, dude, that is a lot of effort for this. I commend it greatly. Royalty Redditor. Put your carts away, people. On mobile, you can probably guess where this is going by the title. I myself have heard plenty of stories about inattentive shoppers just leaving their carts smack dab in the middle of Walmart parking lots, or even worse, right behind cars. Well, I just witnessed my first of these not quite rare breeds. The woman had unceremoniously shoved the cart off to the side as she went inside her vehicle. While it wasn't left behind my car specifically, I felt a civil duty to fight for those who couldn't, and I casually pulled the cart into place behind the offending car as I walked by. Now, I wasn't trying to hide it exactly, and I was half expecting to be yelled at, but I didn't hear a word. It was as I placed my own goods in my car a couple of spots down that I heard a small bang and rattle of a shopping cart pushed. She had backed into the cart. It wasn't nearly hard enough to cause any real damage, maybe a scratch if she was especially unlucky, but it was still better revenge than I was expecting. Please, put your carts back, people. One of the arguments that I absolutely despise hearing is the one of, well, it's not my job to put the cart away, it's the cart wranglers. I actually have no idea what it's called, so I'm going to call them cart wranglers because I think that's a fun name for it. But anyways, I don't like people who just simply do the lazy option because they believe someone else's job applies to it. Especially because by leaving a cart out and not pushing it the additional 30 feet to put it away, you're risking not only damaging possibly your car, but someone else's. I mean, the wind could pick it up, it could blow into someone's car, it could end up damaging something, someone could back into it, it could hit someone if the wind picks it up. There are a lot of potential things for a cart to essentially get grabbed by the wind and become rogue, or it could just start rolling towards the entrance and end up blocking traffic and causing problems. So putting a shopping cart away, just spending that extra 30 seconds, prevents a lot of potential damage that could be done along the line, and plus it's just the morally right thing to do. I'm personally a big fan of putting the shopping carts behind the cars of people who just leave them out because it's funny, and it kind of gives them a taste of their own medicine without actually causing any real harm. As they said, worst case scenario, possibly a scratch. If they left the cart behind, that's on them. Like, unless you're being chased by like Michael Myers or some shit like that, there's pretty much almost no reason not to just take the 30 feet to put the cart away. BOGMTL. Car rental company tries to screw me over. I screw them more. A couple years ago, I needed to rent a van to move some equipment. I rented it for 3 hours and had it back within an hour. The next day, I get an email saying I scratched the van with photos attached, showing some minor scratches on the door. The problem is, I didn't scratch the van, which I told them in my response, to no avail. After a couple emails back and forth, I realized they were going to stick to blaming me for the damage, so I started wording my questions in a way that would help my case for a chargeback with the credit card company, asking them to send photos of before I rented it, to which they couldn't provide. Asked for a copy of the invoice from the garage that fixed the damage, which they refused to send, etc. Each email they sent was an annoyingly cheerfully worded stock letter with a couple terse sentences at the end relating to the specific case. Eventually, they stopped responding, which I knew would make them look even worse. When they sent the first email, they had charged $1,000 plus 15% tax deductible to my credit card. After the repairs were done, they refunded about $600 of the $1,150 they took. I called the credit card company and asked to dispute just the non-refunded part of the deductible. They said they'd look into it. I sent the documents and waited. 3 months later, I checked my statement and there's $1,150 in my account. The credit card company screwed up and gave me the whole deductible. Since they had already refunded the difference from the repairs, I lost nothing and ended up making $600 and the company lost $1,750. Obviously, I didn't let anyone know and never heard from the company. I probably put a total of 3 hours into the whole thing, so, made about $200 an hour from this shady car rental place. Well worth the annoyance and probably messed up their books. One of the main reasons I wanted to include this one here is because it has some really good advice and just general presentation of how to deal with shit like this. Like questioning them in ways to help for a chargeback or to prevent them from screwing you over in case things get litigious. Doing things such as asking for photos of the scratches beforehand or after, or just simply proving the scratches didn't exist, and also for the charge of the repair bill. Those kind of things definitely go a long way, and I feel like that's a really good piece of advice just to generally have when dealing with some customer, and I'm putting this in quotations but you can't see it, support. Shelator. Landlord put me through 3 years of hell. My landlord was a terrible human being. Honestly, calling me human being is even pushing it. Just a few things he has done to me over the past 3 years. Stole my dryer and other household products that are in a common area. Made me pay for a plumbing repair which was deemed normal wear and tear. Tried breaking into my house. Retaliated against me because I went to my lawyer after he sent me a letter about a parking spot. He tried charging me an extra $150 a month. Mind you, I was never late for rent in 3 years, except for when he made me pay for the plumbing repair. So, the next month, I was a couple days late. The list goes on. Now, this apartment was nowhere near nice. I found out the plumbing was illegal. He left me with a porch for years that has severe safety issues. The ceiling paint was always falling down, gas heater was not up to code, and so on. I finally got my chance to leave after he wanted to raise my rent by $500 a month. He will do anything and everything to get more money out of his tenants. So I called the building inspector 4 days before I left. I told him everything. The porch, when he finally replaced it, didn't have a permit and was definitely not up to code. I told him about the plumbing and the heater, and I went on and on. The inspector came over the very next day. I saw him taking measurements. Each violation is a $500 a day fine until fixed. I honestly don't know what happened, but my God, did it feel good to finally get him back. He's at the very least on the town's radar. A week before I moved out, he tried telling me I needed to be out at a specific time. I never responded, and where I live, that's not how it works. He tried to threaten me with the police if I wasn't gone. Well, I went to the police myself that morning to warn them. The landlord did come by, threaten me, and harass me. I called the police. They informed him I was in the right. Long story short, he had broken into my apartment, I had left to go to storage, while I was gone. He nailed my door shut. I told the police to get the supervisor because I was over being harassed by this guy. Go figure. He left before the supervisor could get there. I'm positive he knew he'd be arrested on site. Got the police report. They're charging him with a felony for breaking and entering. Fines plus a charge? Don't be a jerk to good people. Y'all remember that trend on TikTok where landlords were making TikToks like, oh, you should tip your landlord for the work they do. It's like, buddy, no. God, half those bastards probably behave exactly like this when no one's looking. Ugh, tip your landlord. Are you joking? Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code OZ at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.